For example 3, we're finding the missing measurement. So we're still using our formula, but instead of being given the radius and the height, and trying to find the volume, we're actually given the volume and we're trying to either find the radius or the height. So you have to be careful with this one. So it does tell us this time to use 3.14 for pi. And the reason we're going to do that is because when the calculation was made, it did use pi to find these, so I will not be doing it using actual pi. So again, the first thing, writing the formula, identifying the parts. So let's do that. So since we're doing the volume of a cone, it's 1/3 pi r squared h. And let's look at the known information. We know the volume and we know the radius, and we're trying to solve for the height. So let's plug in the information that we know. So volume is 47.1, and we're going to go ahead and leave labels out, equals 1/3, and we're going to go ahead and use 3.14 for pi, and then times our radius, which is 3 squared times h. So notice when you've solved equations with variables, we had to get the term of the variable by itself on one side. It is, except we don't actually know the coefficient of h here. So we need to do all these calculations to figure out the coefficient of h. So let's type that all into the calculator. So we're going to type in 1 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 3 squared. And we get 9.42. We do want to use all the decimals we're given here. We don't want to round into the very end. So we are going to use 9.42 here, h, and then 47.1. And you know from solving equations that we need to divide by that coefficient to get this to be 1h. So we're going to divide each side by 9.42. So 9.42 divided by 9.42 is just 1. So that cancels out, leaving us with h is equal to, type that in on the calculator real quick, and you get 5. Remember, our final answer does need a label, and we don't have to round to the nearest tenth because it didn't require that. We got an exact answer here. So our answer is the height is 5 inches. And that's it for part A.
One thing I do want to mention too, to check your answer, just take this height, the radius, and plug it back into this formula and make sure you get the same answer. And since we use 3.14 here, you would want to use 3.14 when you plugged it back in to check your answer.
For part B, we're going to do the same thing. So volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. What are we given? We're given the volume again, but this time we're given the height and not the radius. So we're trying to find the radius. So instead of volume, I'm going to plug in 904.32 equals. So again, we're just plugging in the stuff into the formula and solving for whatever we want to solve for. Is equal to 1/3 times, we'll go ahead and use 3.14, and then times r squared, because we don't know the radius, and don't forget that squared there, that's extremely important, and then times 24. Now this one is a little more difficult because instead of just solving for a variable to the first power, we're going to be solving for a variable to the second power. So we haven't done a ton of this. You've done it when way back at the beginning of the year with, if it was something like this, r squared equals 9, and we square root both sides. We're going to do that, but we have to get it to just be plain r squared first. So notice in this one that I just did, we were given just plain r squared. Here it's got some other stuff in front of it, behind it, so we have to work with that. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out, but what we want to do is multiply all the numbers together and then r squared. So let's figure out what all this multiplied together is. So like I said, I'm going to write it out how I want to do it. So 3.14, and then I'm going to go ahead and write times 24 here, then times r squared. And again, not totally necessary because since it's all multiplication, we can do it in any order that we want. But I just want to show you that we're going to plug this into the calculator. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to type in 1 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 24. And we get 25.12. So just like this other one, we luckily got this number to terminate, like this is 9.42, because we had a third times 9, which was 3 squared, to get rid of the repeating decimal. Same thing here. 1/3 times 24 is 8, so it gets rid of the repeating decimal anyway. So our coefficient is 25.12. R squared is equal to 904.32. Now our next step is going to be the same as we did over here. So to get the h by itself, we divided by its coefficient to both sides. We're going to do that too to get the r squared by itself. So we'll take care of the squared in a minute. You cannot get rid of the squared right now. We need to divide by that coefficient, which is 25.12. So let's divide that. And then when you do 904.32 divided by 25.12, you get 36. So that's nice. We got an exact answer, equals r squared. And now we really don't even need to pull out the calculator for this one, but I'm still going to show you how to do it in case we get not so nice answers. So let's go ahead and square root both sides. And you should know that the answer is just 6. Now, technically, there's two answers, positive and negative 6. But since we're talking about a real-world situation and we're talking about measurements, measurements can't be negative. So we know that the answer is just going to be a positive 6 only. So the radius is positive 6. So the radius is 6 inches. Now let me show you how to plug this into the calculator in case this wasn't a nice number that you just knew the square root of. Remember to do square roots in the calculator. We're going to use that square root button, and on the actual graphing calculator, we did second, and then we did, see where this x squared is, and then we did the square root button there to get that, and then you just type it in and hit enter, and it will always give you just the positive root. And then over here, you can just type in the square root and then 36. A lot of times, like on your iPhone calculators, you type in the number, then hit the square root. That won't work here. You have to do the square root first, and we get 6. So if it was something else, like if you had, I don't know, 54.1 or something that you needed to square root and you didn't know what that answer was, you should remember how we like estimated that. But we can just use our calculator, and you would just put in whatever the decimal is, hit enter, and then you would round that answer if needed. Okay, and that's all for example 3.